Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Before you ask, let me answer a couple of questions. I am obviously not at home. I am not in a familiar location. I am at my dad's in Florida. This is my childhood bedroom. This is not what it looked like when I lived in here. It kind of looks like Toy Story. Yes, there are stuffed animals all over the floor. There are two Christmas trees in here, turned into a mixture of a child's playroom for my nieces and nephews, and also a Christmas extravaganza room. This is like the Disney room where they have both of the Disney trees in here because, yes, my dad is a Disney adult at 56 years old. So, uh, Gia, why are you in Florida? Well, you see, audience, my grandmother unfortunately passed away on Tuesday the 20th. I hopped on a plane that day as soon as I could to get home so that I could be with my dad because it was rather surprising, sudden, and traumatic given the circumstances. Just to lightly discuss and gloss over, we believe that around midnight on Monday the 19th, my grandmother lit a cigarette and fell asleep in her recliner. She, as well as the dog, did not make it. This made local news across multiple platforms. My family has had to deal with reporters outside of my grandmother's house. When it happened, the morning that it happened, our local paper was here to kind of report on the story as it happened, and they did not initially report my grandmother's name and said pending family notification they would not include the deceased's name, only to then change the article within 30 minutes to include my grandmother's name because unfortunately my dad is the one who entered the house. The fire was slow burning and smoldering. They think that it happened throughout the night. We have since arranged their cremation, and they will be um, put together with my grandpa and the other three dogs that they had throughout my life, and we will be spreading them in the places that they wished in the that's stated in the will. So that is where I have been. That has what has been going on with me, and I have been here since Tuesday, and I will be leaving on Tuesday. But as a result, I have not recorded anything. So I am recording this on my laptop. I have not opened this laptop since the summer of 2021, since I basically left grad school. I didn't know how long I was going to be in Florida, so I turned it on the day that I left Missouri to kind of update it and everything. Weirdly enough, this laptop was able to get Windows 11, but my gaming PC at home that I do everything else on couldn't, but that's besides the point. And then my old microphone, and yes, so I wasn't sure how long I was going to be here. So I am pre-recording some things on Christmas Day before 13 children are in my house tearing apart presents that I very carefully wrapped. Anyway, to move on to a more lighthearted topic other than the woes of my family, which we are fine. We are okay. It's been hard, but we are okay. To move on to a more lighthearted subject, I wanted to discuss my best and worst books of 2022. I started this reading journey in July, basically. So I started reading more books like in the beginning of 2022, but I didn't really like dive into the serious like commitment to booktubing and stuff until the summer. So I did meet my reading goal for the year, but I was like gentle with myself. And given circumstances right now, I have not gotten much done. So I'm working on it. As a result, I am doing a lot of this off the cuff, but I do have my Notion spreadsheet in front of me now. So I had 6 5-star books in 2022. I thought that there would be more than that. And some of them are not going to be like comparable to each other. They're going to seem very odd next to each other. So a lot of these, when looked at next to each other, don't look like they're of the same caliber, but it's more like I've explained before that my 5-star scale is really based on like comparatively to things of its own genre. So there may be like a lot of 5 stars and 4 stars that don't look right in the same bucket, but it's not because they are 4 stars compared to each other. It's 4 stars when compared to others of its same likeness. So starting off strong with A Viscount's Proposal by Melanie Dickerson. I believe this was the first book I read by her. Excuse you. I'm so sorry if you can hear my dad's chronic sneezing in the background. He has a problem where he sneezes like 27 times in a row exactly. So he is a drama king, to put it lightly. Anyway, A Viscount's Proposal is about our girl Leora, and she is like not like other girls, and she was like not about it with the Regency Society rules, and she wanted to marry for love, which was not typical in Regency era society, which we know this is a theme. This was big in Bridgerton too. So she meets a very, very stuffy Viscount named Edward who is trying to set himself apart from his father, who was a bit of a rake and he had a mistress. And as a budding politician, Edward wants nothing to do with that. He's trying to keep a very prim and proper reputation. He is on the hunt for a wife who is kind of attuned to that attitude. He doesn't want somebody who's like wild and untamed. So he runs into Leora at night where she's out riding her horse and she is in trouble. And all of a sudden, they end up in an overturned carriage and have to spend the night together. And there are injuries and caretaking if you're into that. And there ends up being a lot of rumors about them because they ended up in a carriage accident and everybody was wondering, oh, the propriety of it all. Like they were literally in the Regency era equivalent of a car accident. Everyone's like, but you were alone in the car. So it was a bit ridiculous to say the least, but it was interesting also because I don't think I've ever read a book that involved like a vehicular accident as a part of a romance, or at least a historical romance. So they have to deal with these rumors and deal with their feelings on top of it because Edward does not want to fall for this wild and untamed Leora who wants to ride horses and marry for love. And she's like, ew, but he's so boring. So they end up, of course, loving each other. And I thought it was super cute. I thought that it was different. But also, once again, this was the first book I read by Melanie Dickerson. And since then, I have read a little bit of her back catalog. I don't want to say a lot because I should compile her entire back catalog before I make such a statement because I know she is a pretty prolific romance writer. But I did enjoy this. There was a bit of a mystery as well. So I did enjoy this book and I rated it 5 stars. I recommend it. I think it is better than the other two. I think that may be a very big statement. Let me see what the other books in the series were. Okay, so now I remember. The first book in the series is about Leora's older brother Nicholas and Leora's friend Julia. That book was super fucking cute. I ended up rating that book, I believe, 4 stars for some reason. I think it was because the villains were particularly cartoonish and it was essentially a Cinderella retelling. And then the third book in the trilogy, A Dangerous Engagement, I think that one was the one that I didn't like because it was about stopping people from overturning the British monarchy, and I read that in the same week that the Queen of England died. So, anyway, good trilogy. Melanie Dickerson usually slaps. So, great recommendation for that 5 star read. Anyway, next book that was a 5 star read for me was The Bridge Kingdom. I don't know if I read this in a time when it was meant to hit, but The Bridge Kingdom fucking hit. I started making Pinterest boards about The Bridge Kingdom. The Bridge Kingdom is about an assortment of kingdoms. One of them is like in a desert, one of them is like a bunch of chain islands, and they're all interconnected. But what connects them all politically and socioeconomically is this massive bridge that you can go on top of and also travel through. It's like both a bridge and a tunnel. It's like if the Great Wall of China had a hollow inside and you could go through it. So this bridge being that it was, you weren't affected by the weather, you could travel through it as much as you wanted. This was a very big commodity, and the control of the bridge was very well sought after. So the people who controlled the bridge were the Kingdom of Ithaca. They were extremely secretive. They wore masks when they went to like other formal events held by other countries or other kingdoms because they didn't want anybody to know who they were. They had no idea who the ruler actually was. They knew that there was a king, but they didn't know what he looked like. They were not pirates, but they were like pirate-esque in that they were seafaring people who were really, really good on the water, and they protected their islands with like man-eating sharks and spikes that came out of the ocean floor. There was a treaty that was made 15 years ago in which the king of Meridrina would have to marry one of his daughters to the king of Ithacana, and the two countries would no longer be at war. Problem being is that the king of Meridrina is the worst person imaginable, and he actually kept a bunch of his daughters in secret. So he had a harem of wives, which was not the problem. The problem was is that he took all of his kids away from their mothers and then stuck them in brainwashing facilities. So he took every single one of his daughters that he got from this harem of wives. We find out later there's like 20 of them, but in the Bridge Kingdom we only know of 12 or 13. They are secretly trained their entire lives to be like the best assassin and best seductress, because they are basically competing against each other to be the queen of Ithacana. And our main character, what the fuck is her name? Anyway, our main character, she thinks that the king of Ithacana is going to end up trying to kill her sisters, so she does what she thinks is best and poisons them, but like fake poisons her sisters so that they are believed to be dead and they can go off and live normal lives. And she sacrifices herself to like go and be the queen of Ithacana because she thinks that she is making this grand sacrifice for her country. And then come to find out over time, she becomes unbrainwashed and starts to realize that her father is the actual villain, and she's learning a bit more about herself as a person and this kingdom of Ithacana, that they are not as rich as everyone thinks they are because everybody's constantly attacking them. So their coffers are dry because they're just defending themselves constantly. So what I really, really liked about the Bridge Kingdom was that there was a lot of character development over time with, again, what the fuck, Laura? I think it's Lara, our girl Lara. Lara undergoes a lot of character transformation in that she is just unlearning this toxic poison that her father taught her entire life. So she has to see everything with her own eyes. There isn't really a moment where, you know, a ding and then everything changes, where she has an epiphany and then her behavior changes. There is learning through time that her father is the villain, that her father is a dictator, that Ithacana is innocent. And she is learning through her interactions with people, and it's a very empathetic growth of her as a character. I think that it's a realistic portrayal of somebody who is trying to unlearn some things that they thought were true. She learns that the Ithacanians are people and they have families and they are just trying to survive like everybody else. I really liked the Bridge Kingdom for its character development, but also the world building and like general vibes. Like the general vibes of the place were just top tier. The Kingdom of Ithacana it felt so vivid and beautiful, and I just loved every second of it. Moving on, my next 5-star read of the year was A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. I will keep this short and simple. Feyre and Rhysand's relationship development is top tier. No one can convince me otherwise. The vibes in this book are top notch. Also, I love Feyre and Rhysand. I will wholeheartedly admit it. I love our feminist king. I am still only about 30 to 35% into A Court of Wings and Ruin, so don't ruin this for me if something ends up changing. But I just really think that A Court of Mist and Fury was a massive improvement on A Court of Thorns and Roses. Not that I thought A Court of Thorns and Roses was bad. I gave it 4 stars, but it is a Cinderella retelling. I just didn't like Tamlin. So I think that, you're not supposed to like Tamlin. I think that Rhysand has really good character development. I mean, I didn't go into this book blind. I know that Feyre and Rhysand end up together and yada yada, but actually experiencing it firsthand, I really did enjoy Rhysand's like 180 from villain to love interest, but it wasn't so fast that it gave me whiplash. I did see like the steps in Feyre and Rhysand's relationship. I talked about this in my review of it, where I talked about it for like 35 minutes straight. I liked that Feyre and Rhysand went from enemies to adversaries to acquaintances to friends to confidants to lovers to forever soulmates. I like that there was that separation. I think that you could see each distinct step, and I think that that is very valuable to have in a story. Not that that is new to have good relationship development, but I think that if we are to go from A Court of Thorns and Roses to A Court of Mist and Fury, the change in writing quality is present. If I were to give like a general vibe of A Court of Thorns and Roses versus A Court of Mist and Fury, I think of it in like terms of color, which I think is pretty spot on given that Feyre is a painter and an artist. But A Court of Thorns and Roses reminded me of like spring colors. It was like, oranges, but like a light orange, like you would find on a marigold, or a pink, and it's like soft, it's like pastel. But then you get to A Court of Mist and Fury, and it's like stormy gray and teals, and it's just the vividness of it is just different. It's a different type of story. It's a different tone of story, and I think that Sarah J. Marathon really does improve here. And I don't know, maybe I'll feel differently later. And I know that it's fun to dunk on these books. I know that it's fun to dunk on Sarah J. Marathon for writing 700 pages of fairy smut. But as somebody who's reading it from this current perspective as an almost 26-year-old woman who has not physically read them herself, the the books do get better. There is a degree of improvement here. So yes, A Court of Mist and Fury fucking slaps. I want a like special collector's edition forever and ever. That is the main book that I want. So that is the one that I have loved the most. That is the one I couldn't put down. So anyway, moving on. My next two were Vampire Academy and Shadow Kiss by Rochelle Mead. These are gonna look weird in this 5-star rating because this is just based on not nostalgia, but okay, okay, hold on. Let me explain. So I think that Vampire Academy as a book, does a very, very good job at setting up the world and setting up the mythology and setting up the society. I think that there is a lot. There's a lot to say. I think that it has a lot to say in a very short period of time, and it does it well. You could call the plot somewhat simplistic, but I think it gets the point across that, Lissa. I'm not going to talk about the plot. We all know. I think that it gets the point across as far as Lissa being in danger because of her powers and how people are seeking her because of her powers and how sought after she is as a resource of healing and of medicine. I think that it really sets the stage for what the tone is going to be like for the rest of the series. That spirit is something that is rare but sought after, and people are willing to go to big lengths to get them. I think that it sets up both Rose and Lissa as characters. I love Rose Hathaway. She is amazing. She's still one of my favorite protagonists in like YA dumb, if you will. And the reason why I rated Shadow Kiss 5 stars is because Frostbite I gave 4 stars. Frostbite felt like the camping episode in an anime. It was still good. It still did what it had to do. I think that, if Rochelle Mead was put in a position where she was told, hey, you got to do something here, because if you say like Vampire Academy and Shadow Kiss were just 2 books and Frostbite was split between the two of them, I think it would be really weird. But I think Frostbite does what it needs to do in terms of speaking its narrative and setting up the further conflict in the story, because Shadow Kiss has a lot of fucking shit going on. So I think that as far as having a 6-book arc, Shadow Kiss does a really good job at bringing together all of the conflicts in the first arc of the story and sets up like the greater stage for what's going to happen in the second half of the series, which is a lot. There's a lot. I have not started to read books 4 through 6 for revisiting YA Part 2, but that is on my to-do list. It's just my to-do list is very long, so bear with me. And then the last book I read that was a 5-star read in 2022 was The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a Carrie retelling from the perspective of a biracial teenager who was outed by her racist peers in her Georgia town for being biracial, and they treat her like garbage. And what ensues is a Carrie retelling. The entire town burns to the ground, and Maddie Washington disappears. But what I really enjoyed about the story, I listened to it via audiobook, and I really think that it enhanced my experience. Two reasons why I think listening to an audiobook enhanced my experience. Number one being that this was a Carrie retelling, except they included a like true crime podcast as a part of the storytelling. So it was a podcast that would air at the beginning of every chapter in the story, and it would be like a snippet from an episode, and it went in chronological order, talking about Maddie Washington, the biracial teenager in this town, and she disappeared and the town burned to the ground, and they are trying to figure out how she did it. They literally call it Maddie Did It. They bring on all of these experts and try to figure out like what happened that made this town absolutely burn to the ground, and why was Maddie Washington suspected to have done it, and where is she now, because they still don't know where she is. So what I liked about that is that it was capitalizing on true crime as a field and as a concept, because as we all know, true crime is really, really popular these days. I, for personal reasons, don't like true crime. I think that the true crime community can get really invasive with people's privacy, and I think that it is particularly exploitative of victim stories. I understand people want to, love a good mystery and everything, but I think that true crime is not as fun as people think that it is. I personally don't like it, but that's just my opinion. So there was that as to why I liked The Weight of Blood, and then also enhanced by my audiobook experience, I was listening to multiple voice actors, voice these characters. Every character had their own voice actor, and you really got to hear and feel like what everybody was feeling, because every single character in this book is a racist stereotype to an extent. So you have the racist rich white girl who thinks she can say and do whatever she wants and that daddy will fix it. You have the white girl who is dating a black guy, so she thinks that she's an ally, but when it comes to actually doing things to benefit the black community, she only thinks of it in terms of how it will look good on her and how it will look good, on her college applications, that she's like a white girl who's helping with grassroots movements to end racism, basically. Like, she's looking at it as, how is this going to benefit me? You have her boyfriend, who is the black football player. He's the star of the football team, and everybody accepts him to the point of, he falls into the stereotypes that everyone thinks that he should, that he's black and plays football. And so that's what everybody boils down his personality to, and that's how they treat him as a person. So he is like at the level of like social acceptance, but then he has a sister who's a black woman who faces adversity in their community because she is outspoken about how they are treated, and everybody is very, very cruel to her as well, but they're okay with her brother. When I tell you that this book absolutely infuriated me as a person, I mean it. This book infuriated me because the people who were speaking and the voices I was hearing all said things that I had heard before. Like, the best example that would make me the most mad would be the racist rich white girl who would do things and then say, oh, it's just a joke and don't take it so seriously. And then when she got in trouble, she would just say, it was just a joke, like daddy fix it. And it made me angry because they were all things that I had heard before, not maybe personally, like to my face, but like I had heard these things before in greater society. So it made me angry to hear it all, and like of course it's in a vacuum being inside this book, but it made me so mad. And I finished the book, and Maddie burnt the town to the ground, and she ran away and nobody knew where to find her, and I said, good for her. This is good for her fiction. Anyway, I hope that everybody is having a great Christmas. I'm going to be spending it with my dad and like 13 children in my house, so this is probably the only solitude I'm gonna get all day, but thanks for sticking it out with me. Remember to drink water and be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. I will be home on Tuesday, so I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.